Santamaria, welcome to the future of fitness.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, super excited. You and I were just chatting about, I think the last time I had someone from Future onto the future of fitness, which sounds a little redundant, was Josh Bonnetal. And that was like
Right.
3-4 years ago. And, things were very different back then. We don't have to go into why, but they were. And, I like the model you guys are doing. I've been a coach. I've saw kind of the inception of remote coaching very long time ago, and how just Neanderthal it was. It was like spreadsheets and emails and and now, having experienced it just this week with one of your coaches, I got on with Lee, very nice man, and got to see how Future is, it's felt so personal, right? It felt really good, and it was all within the app, and the communications are tight. And I know you're the technologist of the company, so you can give us a lot of insights into how that's working. But I think coaching is core, and we could talk about, artificial intelligence, which is now part of that. But I think still the human to human accountability is critical to what we do as an industry, and scaling that to some more people who may not have access to it is really important.
That's
and
right.
So that's why I love talking with you guys. So I'm going to shut up for a second. Justin, give us your background. You're one of the founders there. How'd you get into this whole thing? And yeah, let's start with that.
Man, how far back do you want to go?
As far as you want.
So like you said, I'm the technology guy. And so I got my start not on the fitness side, but definitely I grew up loving computers and the power of the internet and all this stuff, and ended up getting a degree in computer science and on the code stuff. And I think that's really important to start with, because at the end of the day, I think I've realized I like to build things to help people. And that's kind of if I'm doing that, you've got a happy camper in me. And I ended up getting a job at a little company you might be familiar with. It's called Apple. And it was like a dream job where I was a software engineer working on communication software for the Mac when I started. And I got invited to join a top secret team in the mid 2000s. And it turns out that was the iPhone team. And,
Wow.
and it's like, you're going to build our communications app, our messages app. And so, okay. And ended up leading that team. And so got to work with Steve Jobs and got to work and see how great products like iPhone get made and be a part of that, and launched iMessage and FaceTime and, things we just see as ubiquitous today. And for that to be kind of your first job, I don't think it's special, but as time has passed, you really appreciate it. So my background's really in that kind of virtual communication space. I was at Apple for 10 years and then went to Airbnb, where I led guest experience. What was really interesting about that and how it builds into this story is Airbnb at the time, this is 12 years ago, I remember telling my dad, hey, I'm going to join this company called Airbnb. What is it? He's like, so like you sleep on people's couches? Like, what? You're at Apple, man. What are you doing? And that was the kind of reputation Airbnb had. And within 2 years, they really crafted a narrative around kind of this kind of hospitality you get with Airbnb. And this idea that what I was responsible for was, how do you have people get comfortable with booking something? Maybe it's the only vacation they're going to take, and feeling, somewhat confident with that, not ever having seen the place in real life, not necessarily having any idea who these people are that are hosting, all these things. How do you get someone comfortable with the digital connection and deliver digital hospitality essentially to guests of Airbnb? So I did that for a couple of years and realized, okay, I've worked for the largest company in the world. I've seen this rocket ship startup. Let's start at the beginning and work at the smallest company in the world. And that's one that you start. And fitness, this is where I meet one of our co-founders. I remember sitting at the table with him. This is Rishi Mandal, and saying, when I was in my best shape, I had a coach, because I ran cross country and track in high school. I ran miles every day, and I just put down my school bag and went. Right. And for Rishi, he's like, I'm all about fitness. Fitness is my life. It defines me. Right. He played soccer in college and said, I recognize how important my coach has been to my passion for fitness. And I was kind of going, well, since high school, I've been kind of a stereotypical engineer. This is like a very dated concept, having fourth meal on the way home from work and kind of, very kind of sedentary life. And I realized I've I was in the best shape of my life when I had a coach. And so it was very interesting to have two very different personalities come together, sit at the same table and be like, the thing I need is the same thing you need, despite the fact our approaches to fitness and our attitudes around it are completely different. And it's around that an idea sprouts. And it's around that where it's like, hey, what is this really about? And what it's about is the power of having someone who understands what your needs are, having someone who can take this load off of you, having someone who understands the complexity of your life and the chaos of it. How routinized are you versus how you aren't in your mindset toward fitness and health, and figuring out what's going to work for you. And it turns out that someone like me who's like, man, I just need to get off the couch and get going. This is a tough ask, to him, who was like, how do I get that delta, get from the level I'm at to an even higher level? How do I, in pickup basketball, play a better game? How do I do that? And I think that's where Future starts. And that's, 8 years ago. And since then, you realize that you build a product around an expert that's going to do three things for you. They're going to provide you expertise. Without expertise, you just have a friend. That provides the opportunity for flexibility. So a lot of what people lack is consistency, just plain old consistency. And what you can say is like, you need to commit to something and the problem with that is it's brittle. The minute you break it, you're starting from zero. So Future takes a slightly different approach, which is we're going to understand you. And if you have a commitment to this, we're going to make it work for you. We just need to stay in communications to make that happen. And then the third thing is motivation, genuine motivation. And that changes over time. But when you have a human, a big part of that motivation is a personal accountability. And it turns out that for a lot of people, that's a really key piece of the puzzle. It's not the only piece, and it's not always the most critical piece, but it can be a real driver for people making that switch. And when you fast forward 8 years, and the reason I'm talking to you, Eric, today is because we've seen that kernel, that understanding, that insight be true at the end of the day. And so I'll stop there. There's a lot of places to go with that, but
yeah, there is. And I think of a lot of things when you're describing the world of coaching. It's something that I love. I mean, at the end of the day, I still consider myself a coach in so many different ways. And I always promise my wife I don't coach people I don't know at the gym, even though I see them deadlifting incorrectly and I'm dying on the inside. But the coach client, the coach athlete, the coach, whatever you want to call it, relationship is so important. And that human function, I think also when I look at what you guys do, there's so many people out there that are so intimidated by the gym. They feel so alone when they go in. And that's been talked about in numerous ways on this podcast. And I think having someone who's like, okay, I can confide and trust this person, that takes a little bit of time. It doesn't happen out of the box, right? It's not like the first time you're going to meet your coach, you're going to be like, well, I trust you explicitly with everything in my life. But it happens over time. And I think that's really important to guide someone and be like, hey, we can start with these things in the gym, or maybe you can do this stuff at home and we'll kind of build up. It's like, hey, this is your personal guide. And that's really important. I agree. Like the best shape of my life, I was just talking to Troy Taylor from Tonal about this, like the best shape of my life. I still have this picture on my desktop computer. Someday I'm going to get back to it. 35. I had a coach, right? I was doing everything. I was ripped. I was in great shape, hitting all my markers. And I'm like, well, that was because I had accountability and I had someone who, as hard as I was training at the time, I knew he had my back and he was going to get me to where I wanted to go. So I guess the big question is when you take that coaching relationship, and this is what you guys work on, is like, how do you scale that out? Like, typically a coach can only work with 10, 20 people. But yeah, not everyone knows how to access a coach. Not everyone understands the relationship of what a fitness coach should do or what that agreement is. We as an industry, we're like, well, of course we know. We're going to give them programming. We're going to give them accountability. But not everyone knows what they need. So like, how do you start to scale that out? And I'm sure that was the mission that you guys originally.
Yeah. And this is a really, when I really rewind, you go back to kind of first principles. And I think it's important also to realize that I've never been a fitness coach, right? And no one on the team when we started had ever really been in the kind of industry. We've been recipients of the service, but never on the other side. And I think, you get this very Silicon Valley approach, which is like, okay, what's the best way to learn about this quickly? And how do you set this up? And what you do is you go, okay, let's get some great coaches and shadow them, follow them. What do they do? What works for them? Because at the end of the day, the premise of Future is super simple. Is like everyone who's successful and in the top 1%, whether they're CEOs or celebrities or athletes, they have coaches. They have coaches in fitness and in other aspects of like they have people, they have a support team. I do okay, but I can't afford a support team. Can we do something with technology to bring that to more people? Right. And so you follow, you don't need to invent. You go look and see what is a relationship like, and then how do we adapt that to something that can be brought to more people, that can scale, that can do these things, because that's the challenge and that's the promise and potential of what technology can unlock. And in 2018, you're like, I think this like mobile thing is a big deal.
Yeah.
I think having like the world in your pocket is something we could probably leverage. I think the ubiquity of communications and recognizing that people are very comfortable with remote communications and you can develop intimate, close relationships remotely is a thing. And that's why, my Apple experience was something that really kind of felt like a green light. And then you can emotionally connect and really deliver on the idea of hospitality, having never met someone in real life, right? That's a thing that we were doing at Airbnb. And so you take those ingredients and you apply it to like looking at great coaching. And this is where, you talked about Josh. We met Josh, who's, a monster in the personal training industry. He got it right away. And he's like, oh, let me introduce you to people and let's talk to them and let's do that. And he's got the energy of 5 of me. And so, you get into this and you start looking at it. And what you realize very quickly is we're not building a company that centers around reps and sets. We're building a company that centers around connection and relationships. And what I mean by that is what you're saying, which is a coach's first job on the first call, on the first week, on the first month, and forever is constant calibration, understanding what your needs are, recognizing that oftentimes what you say isn't what you need, but a good coach bridges what you're saying with what you need and builds that understanding and understands that the best workout for you is the one you're going to do. And then how do we push you within that framework? It's very easy to say, Eric, here's your plan. Actually, you don't need anything for that. If PDFs solved this problem, we wouldn't be talking. You wouldn't have a podcast because it would just be simple. You just follow the directions. This isn't an industry. This is just what happens. It's a far more psychologically complex problem than, if I just had the right inputs for how to move in the gym, I could get the right outputs, right? And you bring up the idea that there are people who know they need to do this, but the gym can be an incredibly intimidating place for them. And I think there's this fallacy that people who are successful at the gym are successful because they've made fitness a centerpiece of their life. Because you go to the gym and there are people who are so passionate about fitness and so successful about fitness that you're like, oh, in order to be in here, I need to be like them. And the key, the unlock is recognizing how do you create the social safety for that person to be successful in your gym and for that to not feel like they have to be like that person who's made fitness a cornerstone or centerpiece or passion, so to speak, of their life. They're just here to brush their teeth. They're here to get a job done and go on with their life because they know this is good for them. They know it's going to help them feel better. They know it's going to be something where it's like they're going to live a better life, but it's not about the fitness. It's about all that stuff. And how do I come in here, do the best job I can, get the most out of it and come out and not feel like I'm not good enough or I don't belong here or I don't know what I'm doing. One of the ways Future has tried to bridge that, not just through the coach, but through how we deliver exercise, which is, you have a video. This was revolutionary years ago, but you have a video that shows you the workout on your phone, but we also we pump audio voice cues into your ears and you have If you have a watch or wearable, you can see the movement, the number of reps, this sort of thing. And so, a quick glance and whatnot, you can kind of move through the gym and not be like, I don't know what I'm doing, and kind of at least get that initial bit of confidence. And like you said, Eric, our coaches too are very flexible to like, let's start at home. Most people, or not most, many people work out from home, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine.
Well, let's do this. I think the best way is maybe walk me through the user experience. I mean, I started a little bit yesterday.
Sure.
I was telling you I met with Lee and we scheduled a call. He got to know me a little bit, but yeah, through the start to finish or start to, consistency, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Absolutely. One of the great things about Future is once you sign up and join, you select a coach and then you schedule a strategy call with them. And this strategy call is like, meeting a coach in real life for the first time. It's where the two of you get to know each other and where your coach really starts their job. And that is to figure out what makes you tick, what you think your goals are, and what your goals, and how to bridge that into how we make that an actionable success plan. And then builds rapport with you, because it is all about that constant calibration, that trust. How do we create the bubble of safety so that you can give feedback, so that you can feel the trust that we're actually here for you. We're your advocate. The reason your coach is there is not because of them, it's because of you. But we have to have a two-way relationship for this to work, right? If it's just one way, it's far harder to see the value of coaching, because it's just information flowing in one direction. And so you start off with your strategy call. You agree on a plan. You get to ask any questions you want as a real person, and then you get set up with a custom workout plan. Hey, I'm going to work out 3 days a week. And where Future we've really emphasized is the flexibility of that. Hey, I'm going to do 2 days in a gym because I go into work on those days and there's a gym in the building or whatever. And then there's a day at home where it's like, I don't have a bunch of equipment, but I have time because I work from home on that day. And then I go for a run on the weekend. And we can build that plan for you and around that. And so a coach does that for you. And it's all in an app, and it's all got step-by-step instructions and a video for every movement and the number of reps and the number of sets. And we go even a step further. And if it's weighted movements where you have a barbell, dumbbell, we prescribe the weight and progress you on that weight through your journey, right? The idea here is, how do we just make this something you just can go do? You don't have to be thinking about, you don't have to kind of, guess. How do we take the guesswork out of this? And how do we just make it something you can put on autopilot and feel confident in? And so that's the idea of that workout experience. Your coach, depending on your style and your needs and whatnot, reaches out to you, motivates you, tries to do whatever they can to get you, if you need to get there, or keep you consistent. Because what we see is most people have the intention, are very high intent when they reach out for a service like Future. They're very high intent when they go and say, I'm going to sign up for a gym membership. I don't think anyone's like, and now I'm done. Once they're past that, they really are. And it's really, how do you take advantage of that and jumpstart that and try to keep people in the consistency bucket, though there is a natural cycle there. And so all the Future is built around, how do we do that while also recognizing that people miss days, people get busy, kids get sick, meetings go long. And then, I'm tired. It's a very common reason why people might lose consistency. And so a coach will text you and motivate you, move a workout, change a workout, and say, hey, I noticed, while I work out right now that we didn't get that in, let's do a stretch here at the end of the day, 5 minutes, just stay consistent, do something. And so that's baseline of consistency is where our coaches start. And if you have that baseline, you can start getting into the detail to the level at which you want to. If you're someone that's like, look, I don't care about, the structure of my workouts or the, body composition or muscle grouping. I don't care. Just give me a good full body workout and keep me motivated and keep it interesting, fine, let's do that. That sounds great. But then if you're like, hey, I want to get into the technical detail and kind of the nitty gritty of these reps or these sets or whatever, coach is there for that. And so it's really about that relationship. So, I think, and then you kind of, the relationship takes over from there. And it's really about how you connect with your coach, how you progress on your own journey. And so every future experience is very different.
And as that, I mean, you're obviously very in tune with the technology of it. How is the platform enhancing those kind of like the blocking and tackling of coaching, right? Which is like communication, trust, experience, meeting them where they're at, like all the things that the art and philosophy of coaching, like how is the technology better supporting having a better platform than what we had 8 years ago?
So many things, Eric, so many things.
Awesome.
A point of pride and the beauty of our coaching product is that to a client, it's kind of simple. There's like a chat interface, you have a FaceTime, and there's workouts, and that you kind of step through them, and there's great music. And again, the headphones, the watch, all this stuff just kind of works. And there's just an incredibly intricate dance around an app that you open that's actually your app. No one else is seeing or experiencing what you're seeing or experiencing on this app because it's built for you. It's like your personal app for fitness. And what goes into the simplicity is an incredibly complex system of things. The way we like to divide it up is into kind of the IQ of coaching and then the EQ of coaching, right? And the IQ of coaching is the things like, okay, what's the plan that's going to work for you? What are those reps and sets? What are your goals and your movements and your preferences and your limitations and your injuries? And just what's the formula for what the workout plan needs to be from a physiological perspective? And, these coaches have, in many cases, are more educated than I am. They have higher level degrees than I do. They really understand the science of the body and of movement, right? So there's the IQ piece, and our tools can do a lot there because there's so much, that's more of a scientific system, right? It's inputs and outputs. It's there's formulas associated with these sorts of things, for lack of a better term. And so a lot of what our tooling is able to do is to really supercharge the coach. And to date, our technology is, how do we make our coaches look and feel superhuman? How do we allow our coaches to have dozens or even 100 or more clients, but have every client feel like I'm their only client? How do we scale? Scale is a factor here. And then how do we help a coach keep dozens of relationships in their head, right? How do we help a coach understand that when I go to Justin, we talk about one set of things and he really does connect with his family and he cares about his life and whatnot. And then we go to someone else. It's really about like, this is fitness. Give me the straight stuff. I don't need the fluff. Let's go, and a great coach can do both of those things, right? And so how have our tools developed in that? And what we've done is we've, for years taken machine learning AI technologies to help surface anything from, workout sets and suggestions to, analyzing chats and suggesting next steps and doing these things. And then ultimately saying, you're the expert coach, you have the agency. Let's you make the final call on these things. And that's a model we've been running. That's a playbook we've been running for 5 years now. But we've always had a really hard thing where it's like, this is a premium product. You're paying for a coach and their time and their brain. And so at the end of the day, the coach is the buck holder, is able to take whatever our systems are building and put their touch on it, adjust it, make it specific to you. And so what we've largely done is try to have an 85-15 rule where it's like, if we can get 85% of the stuff that's super uninteresting, that's the table stakes stuff that every workout needs, that you just need to do and is kind of just uninteresting to a coach, frankly, and doesn't actually impact things. It's just administration and handle that. And then allow the coach to focus on, okay, let's calibrate, let's form the connection, let's have that. And that's where a coach spends their time and then does the kind of, hey, I'm going to do this for you, or I'm going to talk to you about that, or this movement for you is the specific thing I want you to focus on. If a coach spending their time on that, that's very high value. That's why you have a coach, right? It's not because of your warm-ups, and And while the coach still has complete agency over the entire thing, that's how you get to scale, because you're allowing the coach to express what they're most, why do you have a human coach there? Why you have a human coach there, and deliver on that with every client every day.
There's, I've had several people that I've talked to either on this podcast or individually in person, in the concept, and I think this is across so many different industries now with AI, is like, developers, right? You probably know that space really well. It's like, is it going to replace developers? No, but it's probably developers who use AI successfully are going to replace those who don't. And I think the same with coaching and training is everyone's worried, like, was artificial intelligence going to replace the trainer and coach? And I think that's a really hard thing to replace. Now, do I think AI, trainers and coaches that use AI, are they going to be able to handle 100 clients versus a dozen? That maybe is going to take away from people who don't use AI. Yes, I think that's very real. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on that. And like, how are you guys, like, how is this convergence of artificial intelligence and great human touch and coaching meeting together? What's your vision for that? And how are you guys working towards it?
If there's anything I think about and talk about all day long, it's this exact topic.
Yeah.
Because I think, some of this, I think you can take any industry and have this conversation and swap fitness for law, or fitness for health, or fitness for basically, like you said, developers. And I think, the overall sense, and AI has the potential to be so big that, I think people are, I used to say, imagine talking about the internet and be like, should we use the internet? But I think AI is actually bigger than that.
I think so. Yeah.
It's akin to kind of the Industrial Revolution. Like, what's going to happen to like handcrafted goods? Because now we're going to have mass produced goods. There's a, I think, a healthy tension, right? And a justified kind of what's going to happen question mark. And the approach that we take is you can't ignore it, or else you're going to be obviated. It's not going to work out well for you, because this is such a powerful force. And if you interact with AI today, it's funny. My mom's in for this weekend. We were talking about AI because, how can you not? And she's like, what's this, ChatGPT? And I pulled up ChatGPT, and she had used it before, but like for fact finding. And I was like, just talk to it. And she starts talking to it, and you see a light bulb moment. This is my mom. My mom's in her, I'm not going to reveal her age, but it's older than 44.
Okay.
Which is my age. And it clicked for her, where she's like, oh, you mean I can just talk, I can just have a conversation? I'm like, yeah. And it's interesting where you're just like, 6 months ago or a year ago, that wouldn't have been how you thought about this. You'd be like, oh, that's very clunky and silly. And have a conversation, like it doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound right. But that's the pace of development that AI has had. And so we've had to really accelerate our pace and understanding, like, what's this doing to future? What's this doing to the industry? What's this doing to the workforce? What's this doing to the world? And I think everyone's having that conversation. When it comes to coaching, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the same thing as like software development, which is the people who understand this power and how it's going to enable that much better delivery of an experience are going to do it at another level. And then the people who don't are going to struggle more and more and more with their ability to deliver the value for the cost. And it's a simple equation, right? And so our approach is, how do we help our coaches deliver at that level? But also, is there a tier? Is there a version of coaching that is even more affordable for people, right? Because with Future, we took personal training, can be thousands of dollars a month if you use personal training in the gym every session, right? And we said for $200 a month, for $199 a month, or if you're on a yearly plan for $149 a month, you can have someone program workouts for you 7 days a week, who's always on, who you can talk to, who will adjust your workouts, who will be your expert, who answer any question, all of these things. And it's, it is 10x cheaper than having a human come to your house or meet you at the gym. Okay. That's still too expensive for like 90% of people who just need to move more. Like 70% of Americans don't move enough. How do you take what is an emergent technology and fit that into a portfolio that allows you to bring forward your mission of bringing this idea of anyone who needs a coach should be able to have a coach? It shouldn't just be available to the top 1% or top 10%. It should be available to everyone, because this is a problem. Like, we're trying to solve a problem here and not just vend a new solution to a group of people who don't need one. And I think the power of AI is twofold for fitness. One is allowing a coach to deliver way more than they were ever able to deliver in the past. And then also, is there something that can really help people get started or get consistent on their fitness journey on a level that hasn't been doable before because it was just too expensive?
When I think about, I've always had this vision, right? Because I remember distinctly years and years ago sitting and programming for all of my clients. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, this is the most. So it's like, it became like just an hour on Sunday morning, and then it became my whole Sunday. And then it was like, and it was great because I was, obviously seeing success. I was getting more clients and I was doing more in-depth programming. And it was, I thought I liked it, but until it took up my entire weekend. But I've always had this image of like all of this potential data on an individual, right? And I play this, I run this stuff through my own chat GPT all the time. It's got my blood work, my genetics, and like, and then maybe access to like my wearable metrics, maybe a nice movement assessment, a couple times a week to see how my body's flowing and if there's any improvements and, potential risk, injury risk, like all the stuff that flows in goes nicely to a coach who then knows how to interpret it. And then in a very human way, right, relate that to the person and why it's important and why it's going to help them meet their goals. And then also be understanding enough to see that, their challenges and what they have in their life. It's all like all of that background stuff that would take hours and hours, if not days, to completely shift. Like, okay, if I'm doing workouts for you, Justin, like all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, Eric, I got to go off to New York for 2 days. Like, well, great, Justin, that just screwed up my whole plan. Yeah. Right? Like, now I got to go back and do everything. And then well, then you're on there and you're getting 4 hours of sleep while you're there, and your HRV dropped to like, 25. And you're like, well, I shouldn't be doing any of this training now. So it's like, as a coach, there's so much stuff that is so reactive. And it all can be done like, at the genetic level, you can see what injuries they may be predisposed to, right? And then you get the blood work coming in, be like, okay, well, maybe this person needs, some very, very specific supplementation or changes. Like, all this stuff can feed in and then have it interpreted by a coach. Is that something that's similar to what you guys are looking at for the future of coaching?
When it comes to high level coaching,
yeah.
Why wouldn't we? Is kind of my question. Like,
yeah.
The thing that this technology revolution unlocks is things that humans can't do. I can't hand my coach my genome and my HRV and be like, build me a plan. It's impossible. That's not going to happen. But with AI, it's like, okay, sure, here. There's the things that we would be able to, that we are able to do and will be able to do at a very high level, that for people, all the way from people who are incredibly passionate about fitness and like, I know, my resting heart rate, HRV, I track all that stuff. I care, to people who couldn't, care less, just go, I want to be the healthiest I can be.
I'm just trying to get through my day, dude.
My focus is somewhere completely different. Well, you want these things here, have them so that I can just, get through my day, and then understand that, I'm depending on you to make sure that when I do take that last minute trip, we're good. And it's like, if I had a tool that's like, hey coach, all that monkeying that you got to do when that happens, you don't have to do that anymore.
That'd be huge.
It'll just do it. And you're there to kind of, instead of being in the boiler room, flipping all the switches, you're in the top deck of the ship, kind of looking at the dials and going, okay, we need to course correct, and being like, yeah, like now there's infinite switches to flip. A human shouldn't be down in that room. It's the same thing like as any other industry is like coaches have an opportunity to operate at a higher level than, it's almost a dream level, right? Where you're not designing plays, you're the head coach. You're the person that goes, okay, I can see things at a much higher level now and understand where we're headed. And instead of the particular logistics of everything, I can point and it'll go over there. And I can look at it and go, that makes sense. That's the mentality shift. And that's, I think the big picture when you say the coaches who embrace technology and AI and the coaches who don't. The coaches who embrace will actually be very strong directors of fitness and not implementers of fitness.
Well, I look at so I've been playing around with this stuff, Justin. I'm on multiple, GPT and
sure,
all of them, Claude.
All the
I
stuff,
play around with
right?
them all. Yeah, I play around with them a lot. And, I have one specific that's like my personal health coach, right? So I gave him my blood work from a year ago to today. I'm playing around with peptides. I told him what I'm doing with that, all my supplementation, my exercise. I just fed it a bunch of data and I keep feeding it data. And now it has the deep research mode on ChatGPT, which is incredible. I'm like, it spent like 15 minutes analyzing everything and all the research. It has links now to everything. I'm like, oh my God. Now I was, if I'm coaching still, right, I would want a different GPT for every single one of my clients.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. And then and I just see this where I'm like, why wouldn't I? Like it's $30 a month. Like I can have all this in and it makes me look like a rock star. Right. And I think it's so interesting that we have that capability. I don't think very few people within the United States and maybe other countries, China, Russia, right, are in this AI world. Most countries, most people on the planet have no idea what's going on, not to any fault of their own. Right. And then within these countries where we are aware of this stuff, very few people are even aware of it within the country, right, are playing around with these things. So people are pretty aware. So I guess the question is, and we're taking a step back here. When you look at the existential or the major impacts on what AI will do to this, and there's other things, and I just listened to a Rich Roll podcast with the gentleman from Sapiens, the author, and they were talking about AI and its impact. And AI doesn't sleep, right? And it's going to keep pushing us to a different pace. And there's a lot of things that concern me. And I think if you're paying attention, there are a lot of things that should concern you too, but you can still be optimistic. So when you look at the future of where this is all going with people's, not just coaching, but people's health, what are you optimistic about? And is there anything that scares you just a little bit?
At the end of the day, and this is a realization I've had to have, being 25 years in technology. At the end of the day, AI is a tool. It's a tool. It's a human created tool. And like any tool, it can be used. It's on its surface. It doesn't have a moral stance, but it's how we use it that determines the things that we could be optimistic about and the things we could be pessimistic about. And in a world of grays, I'm going to use black and white terms. It can be used for bad. It can be used for good, right? Certainly, I'm optimistic that AI is going to provide links and correlations and understandings about how humans work, how disease is cured, how our bodies can be optimized, but at the end of the day, all of that amounts to, I believe in the power of AI's ability to help humanity live happier, healthier, more fulfilled lives, because it's able to kind of cut through a lot of data and a lot of things that are going to take humans hundreds of years to figure out. We're going to find out in our life. On the other side of that, it's very easy to say AI is going to just take over everything. And what does that leave me as a human? Where does that leave me? And I think when you've gone through every one of these kind of revolutions, and I do think this is our industrial revolution, humans have this, we're in a transition, and we'll probably be in a transition for many years. And I think humans ultimately are adaptable creatures. And I think we underestimate ourselves as a species. We have an uncanny ability to adapt. And that's kind of what's, led us to where we are today. And so my belief is we're very poor predictors of what the future holds. We prove that time and time again. But I do believe we'll adapt into a new way of work and a new way of life. And just like there was the promise of, hey, now everyone's going to be able to never work and always be eternally on vacation, which has been a promise of technology since the dawn of man. What it probably means is we will reach a new level of a new way of working, a new way of interacting, a new way of seeing our world. And that's scary. That's absolutely scary because we don't know what that is. Not knowing is a scary thing. But what I do believe is at the end of the day, humans are going to want to connect with other humans. And that is just a fundamental need. And that's going to become potentially more of a premium and more of something that you're willing to pay more for, because so much of what your day-to-day needs are may be met by technology, that the actual need to connect is something that isn't going to be a given in a given day. And I think we've seen that with how things have played out even in, the last 5 years, that people, were in their homes and doing their things and were very immediately, it was kind of cool and fun. And it was like, I need to get back out into the world. I need to see other people. I don't think that's changing. I think how we do that, when we do that, where we do that, I don't have good answers for you because no one knows. And that's what makes it scary.
Well, I like this analogy of like 100 years ago when the Wright brothers created their first version of the plane, right? They had no idea that we would be where we are now, where there's planes flying over. Katy Perry went to space, but drones also drop bombs on people. So it's like they had no idea there was good and bad, right? Like, we don't know. And I don't think we have any idea where this thing's going to go, but it's going to go there a lot faster than 100 years. This thing's going to accelerate. And I think in 10 years, maybe 15, I don't know, our lives are going to be pretty unrecognizable to what they are today. And it's going to be wild. Anyway, I could talk about this stuff forever, Justin. This is like the type of things that, this is where at a dinner party, my wife is squeezing my knee underneath the table. Like, will you just stop? Justin, I really appreciate you coming on. I know you got to get on with your busy day as a CTO, but thank you for joining me. If people want to reach out to you or people want to get in touch with you or follow you or whatever,
sure.
Where would you like them to go?
Oh, I'm so quiet these days. I'm on X at JS Maria. So JSARIA. And, I keep a low profile, but I'll see you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Justin, thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure. And we'll catch up with the future and what you guys are up to probably about another year or so. So ladies and gentlemen, Justin Santamaria.
Thanks so much, Eric. It's been a pleasure.